the real experts, making no comment at all about the previous set of experts. As we said, this whole event very much was initiated by the Carleton students who went to Rwanda and participated in the course last summer. You've heard a couple of references to that. And then we're joined during the course by 3 Rwandan students. So our student panel is 3 of the Carleton students and 3 the 3 Rwandan students who have joined us. How long are you here for? For how many? A couple? 2 weeks? Yeah. So each of the students is going to speak for about 5 minutes. They'll speak on sort of personal reflections on different aspects of this experience that they were part of. And then once again, after we're done, we'll have time for Q&A. I'm going to sit down in a sec. I'm going to butcher everybody's name, so please, in advance, apologies. I'll just introduce the students as we go along. First is actually a former student of mine, and whose name I'm still going to butcher. Chelsea Giesel? Chelsea Giesel, who took my course, so I should know the course, her name by now, who's going to talk about her research she did in Rwanda, dealing specifically with issues around reconciliation. Chelsea.
Yes, so unlike a lot of the students that went on the trip, I'm in public affairs and policy management. Most of the students were in journalism. So for my program, I have to do an honors research essay, which is very similar to a thesis. So I decided that even before even applying to go on the trip, I wanted to do it about Rwanda. I've been interested in the genocide in the country since grade 10 civics class, when you learn about the genocide. So I decided I want to do my HRE on Rwanda, and once I learned about the class and I got accepted to go on the trip to Rwanda, we found out that we would be going during the 20th commemoration events. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of focus on the commemoration events, and since I would be getting a first-hand experience for my thesis. So originally I was planning on looking at how the commemoration events shaped the collective memory of Rwandans, and I wanted to really look at Rwandans who were born after the genocide, so people who did not have a first-hand account of the events. So I wanted to see how commemoration kind of shaped how they viewed themselves, their identity, and the country as a whole. So I wanted to look mainly on how commemoration affected reconciliation among Rwandans under 20. So I was originally planning on interviewing a bunch of Rwandans under age 20, but unfortunately while there, I didn't have enough time or resources, because obviously I can only interview in English, which really limited my ability to be representative, so I wouldn't be able to interview people who spoke Kinyarwanda or French, so it would not have been really a representative study. So while we were there, one of our projects was to be paired with a Rwandan journalist and to kind of do a profile on them, why they got into journalism and kind of their perspectives on journalism in the country today. And Melissa, who is at the back and also helped organize the event, was paired with a journalist who invited her to come to this reconciliation village where he had previously done a story, and she knew about my research, so she invited me to come along with her. And while we were there, we actually got to interview people who lived in the village. So we got to interview 2 genocidaires, so 2 people who had committed acts of genocide during 1994, and we got to interview 2 victims, so the families of people who had been killed during the genocide. And it was actually, the 2 pairs were, the first pair I know for sure, the man had killed the family of the woman who we were also interviewing, and they were sitting right next to each other in the same room, and we got to speak to both of them. And I would say that was probably the most incredible experience I had while in Rwanda. I think what I will remember most was at one point the man, while he was talking about the acts he had committed, he put his hand on the knee of the woman whose family he had killed, and to comfort her, and I was just shocked that she didn't pull away in fear or disgust, that they had actually reconciled and they could live in harmony together and sit in the same room together and have a discussion together. So I think that's what will stay with me most about the whole experience.
Thank you, Chelsea. Alain, Umbarashinyana, more or less. We're going to talk about radio in Rwanda.
Yep. I think when you had your first radio station in 1920 in Montreal, in Canada, the first radio, I've started the presentation already. The first radio station in Rwanda, we had that one in 1963, and that was the national radio, which we actually call Radio Rwanda. And later on, we had another radio in 1993, which is the radio. It is actually referred to as RTLM, which is the Radio Libre Télévision de Mille Collines. And later on, we had another radio station, which was the private one. It started in 2004. Apart from that small introduction about the history of radio in Rwanda, I may say that radio is the best source of information to Rwandans. There are some factors that contribute to that. And the first is that some Rwandans are not literate. Being not literate, it prevents them from having access to social media, visiting websites, and so on. Another factor that makes radio to be the first source of information is that only few people own TV sets, and some others I may say they are meant to buy newspapers, and some people prefer to buy radio sets once for all to get kind of entertainment, and they may benefit from getting information on those radio stations of their choice. And again, the country is having quick development in different aspects, be it in gender equality, as some experts have mentioned, and infrastructure and technology, and the number of websites are incredibly increasing, which make the radio no longer be the first, or let me say one and only source of information. But people still rely on radio, especially those in the countryside, because you may find some people going to farm, go cultivating, still carrying their radio, and they may put the radio somewhere nearby, maybe in a tree or in banana tree while cultivating. So still, even though there are those websites and new media, people still rely on radio to get information. There are some kind of perceptions that someone done hold on radio. Some believe that everything they hear on radio is trustworthy. They say what they've heard on radio is the truth. And I may say that contributed to genocide, that the role of radio in genocide. As I said before, some people in Rwanda believe that everything they hear on radio is the truth. And by the time genocide occurred, people had been listening to hate speeches on radio, because some newspapers were busy drawing cartoons, demonizing Tutsi, and on this so-called radio, the FTLM, some politicians could give speeches, including the first president, Rwanda, and Alan Thompson got it right in the book. He edited the media and the Rwandan genocide. So these kind of speeches, as I've seen scholars in journalism, they know the theory of hypodemic needle, or how the media can set people's agenda and try to manipulate their thinking. So people have been exposed to such hate media, such hate speeches for about half a century. So I think it also contributed to the genocide. And hold on a second, I'm gonna keep this. In June 1993, that's where that radio again started to broadcast. So it gained a huge audience because it had some kind of music, and some people could listen to it, especially the unemployed gangs, hooligans, and militia. And some people were old or mature by that time. They said that radio was somehow part of the genocide, and they said because they could give names of people and their address and where they can be found and be killed. And those are some quotes from Yusuf Mugenzi, now working with BBC, and some survivors also could listen to it, so that when they could hear their names on radio saying they are hiding at a certain place, they could change their hidings or destination. And apart from that, we've shifted from such so-called hate media or hate radio. We say that now we have kind of love media, I don't know. Because nowadays radios are doing tremendous effort to contribute to the development of the country in unity and reconciliation, and promoting some human rights, gender equality, and many activities. You've heard of community work, you've heard of kind of Mushikirano. It's like a meeting where people from diaspora, people from government institutions, NGOs, they have that platform to discuss about certain problems facing the country, and they can have some recommendation that could be implemented in the next year. And those are aired on radio, and we have some callings and people can contribute. Even though we have a small country, and they say we have more than 30 radios, and some community radio, religious one, they all do good work of unity and reconciliation, and teach people how they can develop themselves, how farmers can use fertilizers, and so on. And thank you.
Noah Lefebvre, going to talk about perceptions of journalism comparing Rwanda and Canada.
Yeah, when I first got to Rwanda, I was just immediately, as soon as we started going to media organizations, just stricken by the complete and utterly different approach that Rwanda has to media. As a student who's trying to get into journalism and into the industry, my experiences with the Canadian and the North American journalism industry as a whole are that it's kind of stodgy and old and stuck in its old ways. There's some phenomenal stuff going on, but there's also a long history, and there's kind of these huge institutions, especially in legacy media, that are kind of resistant to change, or trying to conform ideas of a new media society along with this kind of old style view of journalism, where new media, you can't do new media the same way that you do a newspaper. It's just not practical. And so as soon as we got to Rwanda and we started traveling around and going to different Rwandan news organizations, the big one that really impressed me, and Alan mentioned it too, was Kigali Today, because they were doing something that was profitable, they were doing something that was getting readership, and they were doing something that they loved doing. And it was just such a breath of fresh air, because I know so many stories of journalists my age and a little bit older who are still trying to figure out how to get into the industry without doing 3 years of unpaid internships, or figure out how to actually consolidate love of writing and love of news, because it seems that in a lot of old style journalism you really need to give up a lot of your flair, which is really why I know I personally got into journalism, and I know a lot of us did. So I found it was just a really interesting, new and different perspective, and I think it really comes from the fact that Rwanda is such a young country. Culturally, demographically, Rwanda is young, and it's really exciting. And this was mentioned a lot in our experts who prefer not to be called experts panel. But there's a lot of really fast growth, and I thought that was just an absolutely different approach and perception of media than what we have here. And maybe I'm a little jaded, and maybe I don't hold the same opinions of the media and the institution of media as everyone else does here, but I know from my perspective, I thought that Rwanda was a really exciting place to be looking at the media, because it was different and it was remarkably of its time. Journalism here is still kind of trying to catch up and trying to understand what its time is, but media in Rwanda really felt like it was doing what it was doing in the right time period, and it was doing it well. So yeah, that's my talk.
Denise Uwazi, talking about women in journalism in Rwanda.
Thank you. I think that I'm going to talk about two things according to the female journalists in Rwanda, about the achievements and the challenge that they meet in the everyday jobs. And I would like to start with the achievement. Our Rwandan female who works in media houses, we have some who are very, very known and very excellent in their job, but they are in a few numbers. So comparing to those who attended the classes in university in journalism or other stuff like communication, many of them left the field of journalism and go to the communication field. So other achievement that I see in our field of Rwanda, there are some women who try to find ways of creating new media, like there is a newspaper, like a magazine, which is designed for young girls. It is called Nyampinga. They try to promote the girls' education through that new magazine, helping young girls to be open to the public, expressing themselves. And there is another woman who got an annual award of the best journalist. She's called Louise Marie Louise. She also created a newspaper called Inhego. So those females who tries to be like stars in the country, they work like program owners, they create new programs. They created an association of female, journalist female, and through that association, they go to visit the classes of journalism so that they can help the women who are studying the journalism so that they can continue working through that field because it somehow can help them in the future life. On the challenge, I think somehow most of them are led on the cultural mindset. The first one is like the woman who works on being a journalist. They have the problem of family. The way that our culture tell us to take care of the family, the kids, and the husband. It's somewhat difficult to be a journalist in Rwanda while you have to take care about to your family, and if you have to go back home in the evening, so it's so hard to continue working like a journalist. Another thing is that the women and young girls who try to work, they find journalism like as a job that have hard tasks to do and it is less paid. So it is somehow difficult to continue that way, although you have another way to go to work in public relations and get paid and have less stressing job. Another thing is underestimation in their newsrooms. You can find, if they get the chance to have that job, you can find some chief editors, they think like girls or women can't go to big fields like working on politics and some stuff which they think that men can do on their side only. So even for hiring, you can find that there are some media houses that have a big number of men, and you can find like 2 journalists who are women. So I find that's like a challenge, because if you think that media house will hire men, you can say, no, I will just let so they can go to apply, and I can maybe work in other field. Yeah, I think that's what I prepared. Thank you.
Megan Simpson, going to talk about the importance of bearing witness.
Yeah, so kind of just talking about why it's important to continue to remember the genocide. I first learned about the Rwandan genocide when I was in high school, and it kind of sparked my interest. And back then, kind of remembering it for me was the idea that we had failed. Nations hadn't intervened, media hadn't been there, and that we should learn from this and that it's going to change. And that's a really idealistic way to look at remembering something like this. But it isn't always the reality. Unfortunately, because we've seen things where people are terrorized, minorities, anything like that, since the Rwandan genocide. So, you know, it kind of brings to my mind, what have we learned? Why is it still important to remember? Bear with me, guys, I'm also super nervous. Yeah, so when I first went to Rwanda, that's kind of what I went in with my mindset. And then when I got there, I learned some really interesting things. I was lucky enough, or we were lucky enough to be there during the 20th anniversary of the genocide, which they call Kubuka, which means to remember in Kinyarwanda. And one thing, we near the beginning of our trip, a genocide memorial in Kigali, and there were just tombs everywhere. And one of the things that struck me was the guide said to us there are about 20,000 people buried there. And one of the students, Simon, who's not here today, he turned to me and he said, there's about 30,000 students at Carleton. And that kind of struck me. Almost the entire student group at Carleton could have been buried there. That's a huge number. So for me, it's important to remember these things because these were human lives that were lost. This was an entire generation of people that didn't get to be a part of the amazing things that we've kind of been hearing about in the media and about how Rwanda is growing right now. Another thing that stuck with me at another memorial that we went to a number of them, and it was, they were very interesting experiences. And one of them, there was a small schoolhouse where on the wall you could still see blood where these children supposedly had been murdered. And there was some quotes written from people who had come after, I guess, children and other people. And one of them said, and I don't remember it exactly right now, but we will not forget this generation that has been lost. We will work to make things better for you. So I definitely think for the generation of people that have been lost in Rwanda, it's important to remember those things. And it's important also to not dwell on them. Because we kind of heard from our experts, who aren't experts, as we're calling them, that there's a very interesting balance between you don't want it, as we heard, looming over Rwanda. You don't want that genocide, defining Rwanda forever. But it does still play a big part from my understanding, my limited understanding, when I was there. But the really interesting thing is, now, 20 years later, you're having a generation of young adults who didn't experience the genocide. And they're getting it secondhand. And it's important for them to remember, I think. But it's also important that they are able to move on and build from it and learn from the experiences that you can learn from a scenario like that. And so I found Rwanda very interesting because you have these young adults who are coming in with this idealism of working hard and making things better, but also trying to remember what they've lost, what their families have lost. And it's very inspiring, I think, and very important to remember the genocide, but not let it define Rwanda. So that's all I have to say.
And finally, Noel Manishimwe will talk about this course that brought together the Rwandan and the Canadian students.
Thank you so much. During this course, I learned a lot of what I used to think that happened in Rwanda, but I was used to take them as just history, because we are what they used to call new generation. Those who have who have had history about dark history about Rwanda, what Rwanda passed through in periods of 19 and which end up being genocide in 1994, genocide against Tutsi. And I come to learn a lot of this study student from Carleton, in Kigali in May. But I want to focus more on the history behind journalism between 1990s and 1994, because in 1990, before 1994, there was much of print media in Rwanda, and there was only 2 radios. But what is different is that between 90 and 94, over 40 print media has been created, which was just to like be arms of politicians who want to do propaganda for genocide, and there was no positions. And most of the messages in this print newspapers was like calling people to get aware of something which is going on, which is going to happen, which to get ready. I remember a certain newspaper called Kangura was like in 1994 during the genocide and before the genocide. It was like calling people to work. I remember the message was like, you people get up and work and do the job, and was doing work. What they was meaning behind the meaning was behind calling people to get up and work was get up and get it and they kill Tutsi. They used to use words that wouldn't really mean good directed to the meaning is bad. Like calling people to work, you can think it as let's get ready and do something big and good and interesting, but they was calling people to kill. And that was before the genocide. But post-genocide, there is a big development in media field in Rwanda. I think students who went there or people who are trying to navigate and see state of media in Rwanda there is a very big progress, I can say. The last list of media high council. It's a regulatory board which like regarding for media development and everything in Rwanda. Was listed 24. It was in 2011. Listed 24 radio stations. Whereas in 2000, before 1994, there used to be 2. And nowadays, we shifted from men of print, there is men of radio and online journalism, websites, people as a new generation, we are using Facebooks. And I remember a big news now in Rwanda is a minister in Minister of Sport and Culture, who is Joseph Habineza, is now off of his service. He's off his service. He got replaced recently. It is big news in Kigali, I think now. And I have been visiting social networks. I use Facebook and Twitter, and people are now reacting, which is different from what used to be before the genocide. People are now aware of what is going on in media and are like criticizing everything, which is different from what used to be. People was like and was like sit and listen and do what media calls you to do. But now people are active and like always criticizing. And I have been recently reading on the comment. They was asking why is he of his service? He done a lot. He has done a lot. He's loved. He's admired. But why is he? They was like criticizing everything, which is a very good point. Indifferent with what used to be before 1994. People was like passive. you don't have to react. And I can say the biggest experience I learned from the stay of this Carleton University students in Kigali, in Rwanda, which was mainly made of three things, which was class lecturers with media experts, visits on memorial sites and media houses, stations, and breaks. I used to not to care much on what happened living in Rwanda, because I used to like see them, read them in books, study them in schools, but going out in the field or on the field and visit memorial sites really made me have a deeper image and kind of taking serious decision, if I can say, of the in Rwanda we have what we call never again. I take my thinking back and say, oh yeah, this never again should be reinforced and teach it again to everyone, every generation, not simply in Kigali, in Rwandan people, but all over the world. This kind of people caring much or what human is, because they used to humanize people, and it is not only in Rwanda, because genocides happened in many countries, but this never again. I come up thinking of, I think whatever I will be doing from now on and will be just calling people to fight for never again. Yeah. And going back to media issues, and I think now Aaron Thompson can witness that media in Rwanda is a very big and open field for like entrepreneur to invest, because we are now having more than 5 TV stations and more than 30 radio stations, much of websites online, print. We have many prints also. It is I think it is a very good market for media interested entrepreneur to invest. And the most thing that I can't forget while I have a speech is stating clearly that the stay of Carleton University students alongside their Professor Aaron Thompson was a very good opportunity for us to know one another. We got to know many and new friends, and we ended up getting this chance to be part of this presentation today.
Thank you very much to all our, I would say, student experts. I'd say maybe 10 or 15 minutes for questions. Melissa's here again if people have questions or comments they'd like to ask the panel.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who organized tonight's event. I think it's really inspiring what you guys have done, what you guys have experienced, so thank you. Question directed towards the Carleton students. The expert panel earlier mentioned how our Western view of the genocide was like seen through Romeo Dalla's eyes, so how we've been like, you know, the perception we have of the genocide is always through his eyes and through his works. So I just want to know, like each of you, what is one thing that surprised you about the genocide that you learned when you were there about Rwanda or the genocide that we wouldn't learn through his eyes?
I might have a bit of a different perspective than the other Carleton students, but what I learned and what I really want to focus on for my HRE now from the reconciliation villages, from the Western perspective, I think, well, maybe I'm not totally answering your question because I'm talking more about after the genocide, but the Western perspective is that a lot of the time they're critical about whether reconciliation is really happening or not in the country, and I can't speak to the country as a whole, but at least in the reconciliation village where I was, I found that people did feel reconciled, and what I really want to focus on for my HRE now is why exactly that is happening, and what about those reconciliation villages is making it easier for people to come to terms with what happened and to forgive each other for what everybody did. So I think that is one perspective that the West isn't really getting.
I think one thing that really shocked me was, I don't think until you've been there and seen memorials and talked to people, I could never really wrap my head around how serious the scope of it was and how incredibly fast it all happened. And I remember going to memorials, and I think I speak for all of us when I said the memorial that really stuck out to all of us was Murambi, which was an incredibly visceral, very intense memorial that was difficult to go to because they had actually preserved bodies. And when you went there and saw room upon room, there's something completely different between hearing a number, hearing this many people died, and seeing room after room of bodies, and then realizing that, I know I tried to figure it out, I probably saw maybe only 1,000 that day, and there were, I think, 50,000 people killed at that memorial, at that site. So I think I don't think it's necessarily a lack of perspective because we're seeing it through Delaire's eyes. I think it's more just something that you really cannot wrap your head around until you see, and even then I still can't fully, I don't think I can fully process just the scope of how brutal it was.
I strongly agree with that. That's hard to follow up. Yeah, just to be a bit different ones, there's a lot of things that you, I think, learn about the genocide when you're there. But one thing I found was definitely the media's role in almost indoctrinating people to be willing to go out and kill their neighbor. I was speaking with someone earlier tonight, and they were saying to me, it's crazy to think that people would do that. If you were to think right now about, going to your neighbor and that happening, like, I don't know, I think definitely just learning about the media and how big a role they played in having people so willing. I mean, there are other aspects as well. That's obviously not the only one, but I guess that's one thing that kind of stuck out to me.
I was just wondering if we could reverse that and if the Rwandan students might want to share what has surprised them about coming to Canada.
Who wants to start?
I can say a lot of things surprised me, but
one thing that surprised me was that we're bringing them
Here in February, while we're in the midst of setting records for coal. I didn't want to comment on that before, so.
most of the thing that surprised me is that I was always has been excited to see with my own eyes snow. Yeah, to tell you the truth, it was my first time I was to watch it on TV or in movies, but I was very much excited seeing with my own eyes. And others related to what we have been doing recently in recent days. We arrived on last Thursday, it's now a week. So we have been doing much stuff, I can say. We visited Parliament, and what surprised me is how people are free to enter Parliament, and there are guides who take them in every room, showing ones around, explaining the history of the Parliament. And we have been to historical museum, if I remember. Yeah, there are much stuff. I think my friends will.
Thank you. The time we arrived here, I didn't realize how much it was cold. So I was surprised. We had many ways to pass through the airports, and I was talking to my colleagues. What time will we have to wait for the other students from Carleton, because they told us that they bring to us warm clothes. So I saw them on my last steps from the airport, so I was happy. So other thing is that I saw that people here are very busy comparing to Rwandans, and they work so hard. So it's a good thing that I saw here, and Canada is a beautiful country. I would like to come back. Thank you.
As my friend said, the first thing that surprised me is just the cold, but for sure I want to experience something different. We've been accustomed to like 25 Celsius degrees, and when people in Rwanda have 9 degrees, they are crying, they are shivering. So I want to experience that, and it made me wake up, I may say, because I was eager to meet those friends again. And on the plane, I remember I was enjoying the map, seeing the plane not moving. And when I get to the airport, I told Emily, maybe I'm dreaming, this is not happening, I'm not in Canada. And she said, wait, hold on a second, you're gonna see that you're not dreaming. So we went, excuse me, outside the airport, and I felt there was such a cold. I said, okay, I've never even experienced that. Even in my dreams, I can't even see it. So I said, this is happening. But there's something I saw which is quite similar to Rwandans and Canadians, I may say. It's the hospitality. I remember on the airport at Kanombe in Kigali, at Brussels and Montreal, because we didn't move from the airport. I was just in shirts and nothing to cover, no many layers. And when we came to the airport, so we had those friends with hats and scarves, but actually I had a couple of plans. But thank you. I felt home, away from home, and the other thing that I was so excited about is to go to the Peace Tower and go there and see the town under my feet. So it was good, but I appreciate how kind Canadians are. Thank you.
Alan?
As the teacher, I guess, not the expert, who took this group to Rwanda and connected them, I just want to, anyone who's not from Carleton who's here should realize this all happened because Carleton actually has a program for an African Studies course abroad, and I think people should be celebrating that and make sure that Carleton absolutely enshrines this so that it continues.
Come to Ghana, we're going in May.
But also, just as a teacher, it's just one of those aha moments when you see that it's got nothing to do with you anymore. You sort of started off, you get people over there, you actually teach a course, which was just part of what we were doing. But then you realize that this group is just, it takes on a life of its own. It just becomes this experiential thing that is going to continue. And this event this evening, I don't think you've done, I'm not sure if you've done one of these before after a conference. I think that should be part of the program, that maybe a little, with a little bit of time to pass, and then have a night like this where people reflect on what happened, what they learned, what came of it. And this was all, I was not even around, so this was all the students who were in this, who dreamed of the notion of having these three come here, and then kind of built an event around them being here. So that's really a remarkable tribute to that group of students, that's happened. So, congratulations.
Say something?
You have a microphone.
I think that one person that really deserves thanking is Emily, because it was her idea to do this, and she has spent the last couple months doing so much to help bring these students, and she really took so much of the load on her shoulder. So I think she really deserves credit, and I, on behalf of the Canadian students, really want to thank you for playing such a big role in it and helping it happen.
All right, I think we'll stop there. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thanks again to the students for organizing it, and enjoy your evening. Thank you very much.
Honestly.